Let's not waste any time with this one. This is the Gigabyte RTX 2070 Aorus Extreme. It's big, it's in your face, it's expensive, and it probably performs better than you were expecting. Got one of these and need to know how to cool it? Check out Enermax's all-new Lictech TR42 series of coolers, featuring a full-cover copper baseplate, rubber vibration-dampening radiator pads, and an all-new block top design with addressable RGBs. The Lictech is designed specifically for the new Threadripper 2 series of CPUs and comes in both 240 and 360mm flavors. Check out the link in the video description to learn more. When the RTX lineup of cards was announced, then performance data began to get published in reviews and elsewhere, suggesting lackluster results. My initial reaction was that I likely wasn't going to review the RTX 2070. Sure, I'd review the 2080 because that was the first RTX card to market, and sure, I'd review the 2080 Ti simply because it's the fastest single card solution that you could buy. But the 2070 was coming out later, after the hype had died down. It seemed that it would perform like a GTX 1080, which didn't really excite anyone. And there were literally 0 games where RTX features could be explored. But now, several weeks later, we have all of these games we could play that take advantage of NVIDIA's new architecture. Yeah, that list is less than impressive, but at least it's something. So when Gigabyte offered to send over their flagship RTX 2070 card, the Aorus Extreme, I wanted to see just how well the GT106 based mid-range card could handle Battlefield 5. This Aorus Extreme cooler is new for this generation, and you can find it on both the 2070 and the 2080. Of course, the highlight is this honestly pretty awesome lighting system that they've developed, which uses one LED at the end of one of the fan blades of each of the fans. The LED remains off as long as the fans aren't spinning, and Gigabyte's fan stop mode means that unless the card crosses a thermal threshold, that's the state that they'll be in most of the time. Of course, you can adjust this by bumping up the fan curve if you like, which, given my thermal results, I think would be a good idea. The fans at low speeds are very quiet, not quite as silent as those on the EVGA XC Ultra, but then again, these are larger fans. Right now, they're actually spinning at almost 100%. That's why you might be able to hear them in the microphone. However, it's important to get some airflow going across this giant aluminum fin stack, as I found that idle temperatures were actually unacceptable. Although I wasn't seeing the card boost at all, it was still running around 1400 MHz just in the desktop environment. And without the fan spinning, idle temps were in the low 50s. I'll get into some overclocking later, but as part of my OC procedure, I bump up the fan curve. And this resulted in 100% load temps seeing no measurable increase over stock clocked idle temps. This is both good and bad, I guess. The fans and cooling solution clearly work well because when they're utilized correctly, a load temp of 53C is absurdly good. But I don't want my GPU idling at the same temperature. That's just not healthy. But when the fans are spinning, there's not a GPU on the market that looks prettier, I don't think. This thing screams to be mounted in a vertical orientation to show off its belly, because that's obviously where the magic happens. Videoing the LEDs in action was actually extremely difficult because due to the natural flickering of the lights plus the spinning blades, adjusting my camera's shutter speed greatly affected what you as a viewer can see. I tried to run the full gamut in this clip that I'm showing you here, taking the shutter speed all the way from 1/15th all the way up to 1/500th. But honestly, none of them accurately replicate what my eyes are seeing. It really looks gorgeous, and I would bet that we will see copycats hit the market before not all that long. In addition to the fan blade lighting, Gigabyte also has 2 other areas with really vivid RGBs for you to play with. The backside of the card has an eagle logo that is so bright that it again was difficult to capture correctly. The side of the card facing outward in a traditional horizontal orientation has a mirrored surface, again with an Aorus logo that's slightly less bright but equally sharp and color accurate. The rest of the appearance is kind of a mix of pros and cons for me. I like the heavy-duty metal backplate that aids in heat dissipation. In fact, it gets pretty toasty during heavy loads, indicating that it is indeed coming into contact with the backside of the die and/or the memory modules. I like the design of the physical shroud, but I don't like that it's plastic. A flagship card should feel a little more sturdy than this, I think. As a counterpoint though, the plastic helps keep the weight down, and as a result I didn't see any sag at all, which is always a concern with bulky coolers like this. But enough talk about aesthetics. How does it perform? Well, Gigabyte has already given this card a leg up on a lot of other 2070s out there, as the stock boost clock is already 1815 MHz versus the Founders Edition at 1710 and the reference design at 1620. I was able to bump up an additional 90 MHz on the core and 1000 MHz on the memory by increasing the power target to its max of 109% and taking the training wheels off the fan curve. I honestly was really impressed with the numbers that I saw as a result. As I mentioned before, the expectation for a 2070 initially was that it would give us GTX 1080 performance. Well, it did more than that, and not by a small amount. It crushed the GTX 1080. And with our overclock applied, performance was actually approaching GTX 1080 Ti levels. We weren't quite able to sneak up on an RTX 2080, but I think that's to be expected as this card costs at least $200 less. And then we come to the main selling point of RTX cards: can they handle an actual game with DXR features enabled? Here's a sample of Battlefield 5 gameplay with DXR off. This is running on DX12 at 1440p with a virtually uncapped frame rate and all ultra settings. Take note of how the gun barrel looks, the reflections in the small puddles once I come up on them, and also of course the frame rate in the upper left corner. We're consistently over 100 FPS here, which makes this a great experience. But once we enable ray tracing, the frame rate gets cut in half, with all other settings remaining the same. Yes, I left DXR on Ultra, and that can certainly be adjusted, but keep in mind that this map is very light on ray traced reflections. Yes, you can certainly see a difference in the gun barrel, on the truck tires, and when the barrel explodes, but there are some maps and areas that are covered in water, or have glass storefronts all over the place, or shiny cars littering the streets, or have indoor scenes where basically everything is bouncing light in every direction. That kind of load could really tank performance here, and while this example isn't terrible and almost hits 60 FPS, I think the 2070 is better suited for 1080p gameplay if you want to enable all the fancy eye candy. So the bottom line here is this is still a pricey piece of kit. It's going for $620 on Newegg right now, which is slightly less than what the 1080 Ti's had gone for since the RTX 2080 launch. But guess what? The 1080 Ti's are gone. Newegg isn't selling them anymore. All of the listings are third-party resellers charging $1,000 plus. Amazon doesn't have them in stock either. You can buy 2070s for less than this, but the Aorus Extreme has a really substantial cooler that works well. It's clocked higher than any 2070 except the Strix model. It has some absolutely dazzling lighting effects on it, and maybe most importantly, you could buy it. I have several other 2070s in the office and I'll be doing some more comparison testing with them, specifically with the coolers. But I think right now the RTX 2070 Aorus Extreme sets the bar pretty high and might be difficult to beat. So what do you guys think of the RTX 2070 and this Aorus Extreme version? Let me know down below in the comments. Also, don't forget to check out the merchandise store, pick up a cool shirt like this, or consider supporting directly on Patreon if that's your jam. Thanks for watching, guys. As always, hope you enjoyed the content, and I will see you next time.